Welcome to the Positive Sports Podcast. I'll be your host this afternoon, Ed Montana. Alex is not with me today. Alex and I have both been very busy lately, and so we have not done very many podcasts. In fact, it's been about 4 weeks since I've done a podcast, and wanted to make sure I got back in front of you guys, because here we are on December 1st. November is over, so you're wondering, why do you still have that ridiculous mustache? Well, I wanted to have it one more time to encourage everybody to tell the men in their lives, their fathers, uncles, brothers, cousins, tell all the male figures in your life to take care of their physical health and their mental health. Go get your annual physical exams. Take care of your mental health. Work out. Eat right. We want you around for a good long time. And so that was the purpose of Movember, was to remind everybody of that. And I wanted to do it one last time with this ridiculous mustache of mine. The undernose caterpillar that I've been rocking for the last 30 days. It looks ridiculous. I can't wait to shave it off. It is probably the only thing that makes me happy about finally getting into December. I shouldn't say that. I like December. I like the holidays and whatnot. But look, I know I don't like the holidays nearly as much as you want to be elves out there. So for all of you people that have been out there singing Christmas carols since the day after Halloween, here you go. Now you can get on with it. Now you can sing all the Christmas carols you want, do all the Christmas shopping you want, talk about Christmas, do all your peppermint mocha stuff and whatnot, decorate your tree, put out the wreath, all that stuff, because there's a bunch of you wannabe elves out there that just can't wait for Christmas to happen. And so here we are. It's December 1st. Have at it, folks. Get your Christmas spirit on. Get your Hanukkah spirit on. Get excited about the end of the year. Here we are, the final month of the year. 2021 has gone by in a blur. Everyone complained about 2020. Good riddance 2020. 2021 is going to be so much better. Well, it's been better, I guess, right? We've had a vaccine that's helped things, help calm the whole pandemic down a little bit. But we're still lagging behind. We're still kind of taking a beating from this whole pandemic, COVID-19. By the way, is it still COVID-19? Like with these new variants, the Delta variant, now the Omicron variant, and all this other stuff, like, can we change the number? Can we go to COVID-20? COVID-21? Heck, we're coming up on 2022. Why don't we just call it COVID-2022 or call it COVID-22? I think we should change the number and stop calling the variants. That's just my opinion. Maybe because I'm a numbers guy. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a while since we've talked. Like I said, it's been 4 weeks. And how things have changed over the course of 4 weeks in the NFL season. We are firmly past halfway. Most teams have played 11, 12 games. We're about 2/3 of the way through the season. And to be honest, I'm just as confused as I was 4 weeks ago when we were right around halfway. I'm just as confused as I was 8 weeks ago when we were just a quarter of the way into the season. I'm just as confused as I was before the season started. I don't understand completely what's going on. What am I talking about? There are plenty of surprises. 4 weeks ago, the Patriots were on a modest 2-game winning streak. They have upped that to 6. And now they sit atop the AFC East, a division that we thought was a no-brainer. Alex and I both thought the Bills are going to win the AFC East easily. The Patriots have a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones. Is he a rookie? Sophomore quarterback? Whatever. Young quarterback in Mac Jones. And look, the Bills are looking great, right? They have a great offense. They have a good defense. Looks like the Bills are just going to run away with this. Miami, young team with a young quarterback, sophomore quarterback. The Jets, rookie quarterback, all kinds of issues on both sides of the ball. The Bills are going to run away with this. Most of us thought that 12 games into the season, the Bills would probably have a 6-game lead and would have already clinched the spot. At this point, 11 games into the season, I think most people, myself included, thought the Bills would be 9-2, heck, maybe even 10-1. They looked that good on paper before the season started. Now, they're still pretty darn good. They beat the Chiefs earlier in the year, but they have had their struggles, mostly offensively, I say offensively, but they've had struggles defensively as well. They got rolled up on pretty hard by the Indianapolis Colts. They lost to the Steelers early in the season in a sloppy game. They couldn't score against the Jaguars. Those are 3 of their 4 losses. So while they haven't looked bad, they haven't looked as dominant as we thought they were going to be. And the Patriots look great. Offensively, they're doing fine. Mac Jones appears to be rounding out into an elite level quarterback, which, let's face it, before the season started, I don't think anyone was ready to say that. I don't think anyone thought he was bad, but we weren't really keen on what is Mac Jones going to be. Mac Jones is looking really good. But most importantly for the Patriots, defensively, the Patriots look like a juggernaut. Now, there are some easy wins in there, right? They did beat the Falcons in there, which, the Falcons are not that good of a football team. But look, they handled Tennessee. Now, I know. Tennessee's got some injuries on their offensive line. They don't have Derrick Henry. It's not the same Tennessee team that we saw at the end of last season. But Tennessee is still a darn good football team. And they pretty much manhandled them. So the Patriots are a pleasant surprise, I guess. Well, certainly for the people of New England, it's a pleasant surprise. I would dare to say that the rest of the league is not pleasantly surprised. They are disgustedly surprised. The Patriots are not the most popular team around the country, and so people are not happy about it. But in terms of doing better than expected, the Patriots are doing better than expected. Moving on, look, the most entertaining division in football in the NFL this season, for me at least, is that AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens are at the top of that division with a record of 8-3. They're followed by the Bengals at 7-4, the Browns at 6-6, and the Steelers at 5-1. And the Steelers, who started off with so much promise, winning a game on the road in Buffalo to start the season, the last couple of weeks have looked mediocre at best. At times downright bad. That team looks like... I hate to say this because I like Big Ben. And, he's had a stellar career, probably a Hall of Fame career. But he really is a shadow of what he used to be. And offensively, I think they will continue to struggle with him at the helm. He simply can't do it. It just doesn't seem like he can do it anymore. And defensively, they're an average team at best. And so they're struggling quite a bit. I mean, they tied against Detroit, for crying out loud, which is the worst team in the NFL. Now, I can't think of another team at 7-4 that has had a quieter 7-4 than the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals have some ugly losses in there, and maybe that's why it's been a quiet 7-4, but it's 7-4 nonetheless. If you look around the league at teams that are 7-4, you have the Bills at 7-4. Everyone knows about them. You've got the Chiefs at 7-4. Well, everyone knows about them. You've got the Cowboys at 7-4. Everyone knows about them. And you've got the Rams at 7-4. Obviously, they've made a lot of moves, and everyone knows about them. So, far and away, the quietest 7-4 team, the quietest team that's going to go into the playoffs. That's right, I said it, folks. They are going into the playoffs. They are going to make the playoffs because, let me tell you this, the Bengals, quiet or not, whether you've noticed or not, they are an excellent football team. Not only will they make the playoffs, I promise you, no one will want to play them in the playoffs. Joe Burrow is taking his LSU career and transitioning very nicely into the NFL now in his second season. Second or third season, maybe third season, I don't know. He had knee issues a season ago, or maybe the season before that, missed quite a bit of time, but he is quickly becoming a premier quarterback in the league. He is... They can run the ball. They have receivers. He's doing a good job. The game plan is excellent. Cincinnati is the quietest 7-4 team you've ever seen. and quite possibly the best of all of those 7-4 teams that I mentioned, with the exception of Buffalo. I still think Buffalo is pretty darn good in spite of some of those ugly losses that they've had. Then you've got the Browns. Now, the Browns are 6-6. And I used to say this about the Texans a couple of years ago. But this year, it truly applies to the Browns. The Browns are the best 6-6 team you've ever seen, should be 10-2. The Browns are also the worst 6-6 team you've ever seen. They deserve to be 2-10. They have performances that are fantastic. They have performances that are abysmal. Their offense scores 40-some-odd points in one game, scores 10 the next one. They are incredibly inconsistent. They are incredibly difficult to figure out. They let go of Odell Beckham Jr., which wasn't a big deal. Odell hadn't played a whole lot for them over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons anyway. They've got a good crew of running backs in Kareem Hunt and Chubb. They have good receivers in Landry and Peoples-Jones. They have the pieces in the skill positions. Even their offensive line is good. Why they have the offensive woes that they have in terms of scoring and the disparity between a 40-point game against a good Cincinnati team and a 10-point game against a good Baltimore team, I don't understand. But they are incredibly difficult to figure out. They squeaked by the Lions as well. I don't know what to make of them. Are they good enough to make the playoffs? Sure. Are they bad enough to miss the playoffs? Yeah, sure. And so this is one where, in spite of all of my confidence, so just as I have a lot of confidence for the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills and even the New England Patriots, I have zero confidence in the Browns. And I'm not saying they're bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I have zero confidence like they're terrible, they're not going to make the playoffs. I'm saying I have zero confidence in predicting to you what they're going to be going forward. They have 5 games left. They could go 5-0. They have 5 games left. They could go 0-5. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to look and see what their schedule is the rest of the way. So here you go. They've got the Ravens, right? They've played well enough to beat the Ravens, but they've also played bad enough to lose, right? So they held the Ravens to 16 points. They get a week off to play them again, this time at home. And if they can figure something out offensively, they may very well beat the Ravens. Again, I have no confidence in predicting that game either way. Then they play the Raiders. Now, the Raiders have struggled, but again, with this Browns team, you just don't know. They play the Steelers, who are struggling. They play the Bengals, and they play the Packers as well. Should they beat the Steelers? Absolutely. Will they? I don't know. I think the only game I can predict with any level of comfort is I don't think they're going to beat the Packers. I certainly don't think they're going to go into Lambeau and beat the Packers. So, at 6-6, we could be talking about a really hot Cleveland Browns team at 11-6 or 10-7 going into the playoffs. Or we could be talking about what went wrong for the Cleveland Browns this year because they're not going to the playoffs. I have no idea. At the top of the heap, you've got the Baltimore Ravens. Look, the Baltimore Ravens are another team, have not looked crazy impressive at times, but this is the thing about them. Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh have the same characteristic. They find a way to get the job done. Lamar Jackson threw 4 interceptions, I think less than 300 yards of passing. In fact, less than 200 yards of passing. If I'm not mistaken, it was somewhere in the 160 range. A quarterback rating of 25 against the Browns. And somehow they won that football game. The Ravens are your typical hard-nosed NFC North team. And they will find a way. They're 8-3. They're going to make the playoffs. And quite frankly, they're going to be a very difficult out in the playoffs for anybody. For the New England Patriots, for all you people who think the Kansas City Chiefs still walk on water, the Ravens will be difficult for everybody. For Tennessee, for anyone at all. So, look out for the Ravens. You will see them in the playoffs. Where they land, I have no idea. They have currently had the best record in the AFC. They will be the one team to get a bye through that first round of the playoffs, which is critical because with a longer schedule, 17 games this year as opposed to 16, that 1 week off, that bye week to rest up, to heal a little bit, is going to be incredibly valuable. So, and they're in the hunt. They're in the hunt for it. They could very well get it. Let's move on to the AFC South. Look, there's only two teams to talk about in the AFC South. They're both going to make the playoffs. They're both very good football teams. Again, hard-nosed teams that can run the football, play solid defense, and really get after it for 60 minutes. That's the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Tennessee's in a bit of a bind. They've lost Derrick Henry for the year. And I'm pretty sure it's for the year. And that is the big name injury for the Tennessee Titans. But the Tennessee Titans have injuries everywhere. Their secondary is really banged up. Their offensive line is banged up. They don't have Derrick Henry, as I mentioned. It's going to be a tough road to hoe for them. They're 8-4. They're a good, solid football team. But with all those injuries, there's no telling what's going to happen. They still have a matchup with the Colts. And so even winning the division is a bit iffy. The Colts are 2 games behind them at 6-6. But the Colts have already gone through their injury bug. They were really dinged up in the beginning of the season. Remember, Carson Wentz started the season with 2 sprained ankles, which I don't even know how you do that. But he managed to do it. He is healthy. The team is getting healthy. Taylor is an incredible running back. They have a great offensive line and play solid defense again. So that's a team that is on the upswing. They're playing better and better football as the weeks go on. They got off to a rough start. Like I said, lots of injuries in the beginning, but they are making their way. And they will give Tennessee a solid run for their money. You've got the Texans and the Jaguars. Both of those teams are rebuilding projects, and neither one of them is really good. And so there's really not much to talk about. The only thing those two teams are going to do is they're going to play spoiler. They almost beat Indianapolis a couple weeks ago. The Texans beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago. So their only job is to be a spoiler, and in some cases, they're going to succeed, right? Like the Texans beating Tennessee 2 weeks ago, in Tennessee no less. So let's move on. Then you've got the AFC West. The AFC West is incredibly interesting. You know, for all of the talk about how bad the Chiefs are this year, how they don't seem to have it this year, they're still at the top of the division, and at 7-4, they're only 1 game behind Tennessee for the best record in the conference. They could very well run the table, right? They're good enough to do that, and end up with a bye and become, you know, all roads to the Super Bowl come through Kansas City, make it quite difficult for anyone to get there but them. Again, they are super talented. They have talent all over the field. On offense, on defense, it does not matter. The one benefit of the additional game this year is you can go through a little slump like Kansas City did early in the season, losing games and not looking good in some wins, and still recover and still kind of make it back to the top of your division, maybe even the top of your conference. I thought the game against the Giants was a big turnaround for them. When they got away with playing that poorly and winning that game, I felt like, the tide may start to turn for them. And then the next week, they got the Packers without Aaron Rodgers, who had COVID because he's not vaccinated, yada, 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 yada. And we can go back to COVID talk, but I'm not going to. And it seemed like the stars were starting to align for them. Then they had the Cowboys come into town. Their defense really stepped up in that game, shut down the Dallas offense. And now they're on a roll. They've won 4 in a row. Remember, this team was 3-4 at one point. Now they are 7-4. And they look like they're starting to get their mojo back. They look like they're starting to pick up steam. And if they get hot here coming down the stretch of the season, they're going to be, I keep saying this team and that team is going to be a tough out. With Kansas City, you got to say they're a serious Super Bowl contender. They're not just a tough out. They're a serious Super Bowl contender. We thought that before the season started. Certainly, Chiefs fans and their faith in that team took a beating in the beginning, sitting at 3-4. But now they're starting to look like the team that we left off last year. I won't say in the Super Bowl because they didn't look good there, but they're starting to look like a team. They're starting to look like that Super Bowl contender that we thought they were before the season started. And then you've got a logjam at 6-5 with the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders. Look, I don't like to say this, but to me, the only serious team there is the Chargers. The Chargers are a good football team, and I think they will be the one to come out of those 3. I still don't have any faith in Denver. Remember, Denver started off 3-0. They got a bit of a cakewalk in the beginning of their schedule. They've struggled a little bit since, but they've also put together a couple of games here that they've won that show that they're going to hang in there and they're going to give it a serious fight. The team is completely different with Teddy Bridgewater as opposed to without Teddy Bridgewater. If he stays healthy, they're going to stay in the mix. However, I still don't trust them to make the playoffs. Certainly not to win that division with Kansas City already a game ahead of them. I just worry that if Teddy Bridgewater goes down, then I think Denver has no chance. I mean, it's just he is the only viable option they have at quarterback, and the drop off from starting quarterback to backup quarterback is always significant. In Denver's case, it is precipitous. It is, you're falling off a cliff. Those are 2 completely different teams with Bridgewater as opposed to without. The Raiders, look, for all of the turmoil that the Raiders had early in the season with the John Gruden drama, they stumbled a little bit around that. The distraction was immense for sure, but they're hanging in there. On Thanksgiving, they went to Dallas and they beat a good Dallas football team, and they're only 1 game out. They're certainly in the playoff hunt with a over 500 record. Do I think they're going to make it? No, I don't, because ultimately I think the injuries have been a bit much, and I just don't trust them defensively to keep them in football games. Offensively, they're good. Derek Carr is having another really good season. I think probably his best season yet. They have weapons on the field, but the offensive line is a little suspect at times, and defensively, I just don't think they can hang with some of the other teams that they're going to be playing. So I worry about them going forward. I just don't know that they're going to be able to do it. So let's move on to the NFC East. Look, 4 weeks ago, when we talked football, I would dare to say that at that point we thought the Cowboys have this thing on cruise control and they're going to coast in and win their division. Now, they've gone 2-2 since then. I'm sorry, 2-2 or 1-3, something like that. They've had some COVID issues, which I don't know how much those COVID issues are the issue. Some of it is they just ran into some damn good football teams, right? And when you have to play the Chiefs in Kansas City, it's tough. It's tough to win that game. That's just the way it is. And Dak Prescott has been a little bit off over the last couple of weeks. So offensively, they just don't look as sharp as they did early in the season. Now, you remember, so they had the big win a couple of weeks ago against Atlanta, then lost to the Chiefs, and then lost to the Raiders on Thanksgiving. But before that, remember, the Broncos really kind of manhandled them, shut them down for pretty much the entire game. I think they only scored 10 points that day. And so offensively, they seem to be struggling. They struggled again in Kansas City. They get a little bit, they ran over the Falcons, but it's the Falcons. Struggled against Kansas City. And then on Thanksgiving, they looked okay at times, but then at the end of the game, they really couldn't put it away. Offensively, they are struggling. And defensively, look, this defense was never the strong point of this team anyway. The defense has been doing a good job, but they're not going to win games on defense. It's their offense that has to do it. And so they've got to fix that. They've got to fix that ship sooner rather than later. They still have a 2-game cushion over the Washington football team, who comes in at 5-6. But Washington's won 3 in a row. They were 2-6 at one point. They've ripped off 3 straight wins, albeit not against great teams. And at the end of the day, they lost their best defensive player in Chase Young. Taylor Heinicke is better than he was last year, but he's not great. They do have a decent running game and some receivers to help him out, but that team is still kind of fragile. And if the injury bug hits them any more than it already has, and losing Chase Young, which is a huge, huge blow for that defense, they're going to have a real problem keeping up this momentum that they've built. The Eagles are at 5-7, and the Giants are at 4-7. The Eagles, the Eagles have a good game, like the one they played a couple of weeks ago against the Saints, and then they have a terrible game, like the one they played against the Giants, and this past weekend, and they lost. The Eagles simply cannot throw the ball. It's amazing. This problem with a lack of receivers with the Eagles has been going on for 3 seasons now, and they still can't seem to find a solution to their receiver problems. I don't know what to tell you. I feel for Eagles fans because, it's tough. There's just no other way to describe this. It is tough when you cannot throw the football in the NFL. You simply cannot be one-dimensional and run the ball only. And Jalen Hurts, God bless him, he's doing everything he can. He's hitting receivers in the hands. He's hitting them between the numbers. But if they don't catch it, what can you really do? And it's offensively they struggle when they can't throw the ball. The Giants are not a good football team. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of work to be done for the New York Football Giants. So they will not be making the playoffs this year. Moving on to the NFC North. Obviously, this is the Packers' division to win. They're 9-3. They've got a 3.5-game lead over Minnesota, who's 5-6. And then you've got the Bears at 4-7. The Lions at 0-10-1. At least the Lions will not break the record this season and lose 17 games because they managed to tie against the Steelers. That's the only silver lining for those Lions. They're going to get the first pick in the draft. They've got a solid 2-game lead on the Texans and the Jaguars, so they're going to get the first pick. And at the same time, they're going to manage to not break the record for losses in one season. They will not lose 17 games, which, it looked like they were headed that way. The Packers are the class of that division. Aaron Rodgers, as much as I have not spoken very highly of Aaron Rodgers in the past, look, he's a phenomenal quarterback. He's likely headed to the Hall of Fame. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he's just carrying that team and doing a fantastic job with them. I think him and Matt LaFleur are a fantastic combination. And, he had COVID, missed the game. It cost him. He, stubbed his toe. Apparently his toe has COVID, but he still managed to tear up the Rams. He pretty much went up and down the field against the Rams defense. It's pretty darn good. And then after that, it really is a crapshoot. Minnesota's wildly inconsistent, right? They win games you don't expect them to win. They lose games you expect them to win. They don't have an easy schedule the rest of the way. They do have the Lions. Actually, they do have an easy schedule the rest of the way. They've got the Lions and the Bears twice, but they do play the Packers and the Rams and the Steelers. The only problem with that is that you really can't tell with Minnesota what you're going to get. I mean, they lost to the Niners, albeit in San Francisco, but remember, they beat the Packers the week before that. So you just don't know what you're going to get. They are the Cleveland Browns of the NFC. They're wildly inconsistent, and you just don't know what you're going to get. There are games where they can run the ball, and Kirk Cousins does a great job of managing the game, and then there are games where they can't seem to move the ball at all, and they lose to the Cowboys. They only scored 16 points. So it's a crapshoot. There's really no other way to describe what you're going to get with the Vikings. And then the Bears are 4-7, and look, no matter how you slice it, at this point, I don't think the Bears are a good football team. They Justin Fields is hurt, so they're running with Andy Dalton. Even with Justin Fields, they weren't great. I think Matt Nagy is not a great football coach. I think he will likely get fired at the end of the season. They don't have enough talent. They've got quite a few injuries. The week off may have helped them. I say the week off. They played the Lions. Came down to the last play of the game to kick a field goal and beat them. So, what can you say? The Bears are just not an impressive football team. I don't know what we're going to get from them the rest of the way. I don't expect to see them in the playoffs. Moving on to the NFC South. The NFC South, a lot like the NFC North, has your one starlit team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, Tom Brady at quarterback, Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans. I mean, the names just roll off the tongue in terms of talent at the skill positions for this team. They look fantastic at times offensively. Most of the time offensively, they look fantastic. They're a solid football team offensively. Where they struggle is defensively. And they struggle, I think, partially because of the injuries. They are extremely banged up. They have a secondary that is, God, they've got to be on the 10th man in the secondary. They've got, it's just one injury after another. I watched a game with them a few weeks ago, and I think they had 3 guys from the secondary go down in less than a quarter. I mean, it was awful. And that's what they've been dealing with all year. So defensively, they struggle, but they have the great Tom Brady who can keep putting points up on the board. And you know how it goes. If it's a one-possession game and Tom Brady has the ball last, guess who wins the football game? Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, look, that is the great equalizer. I don't know if he can overcome all of those injuries to make it to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl again, but I wouldn't bet against it. I mean, he's a pretty capable guy, as we've seen before. The rest of that division, you've got the 5-6 Falcons, 5-6 Saints, 5-7 Panthers. The Panthers have been decimated by injuries, lost Christian McCaffrey for the rest of the season. The Falcons are not a great football team. The Saints have been dinged up quite a bit and are finding it difficult to transition from to that next quarterback. Jameis Winston's been hurt, so they've had I forget the guy's name. Simeon. Is it Simeon? Something like that. Taysom Hill is not the answer. It's a tough road to hoe for them. They've got to get moving here if things are going to happen for them. But it's really not looking good for them at this point. The injuries have just been devastating, and for all of the jokes that I've cracked in the past about Jameis Winston, he's clearly the quarterback of that team and someone that they need back out on the field. Without him, they have struggled mightily. Moving on to the NFC West. Whew. This one is, this division over the last couple of years has been the most entertaining because all four teams at times really look like they can take over this division and win it. Now this year it's three teams. The Seahawks look like they're pretty much done at 3-8. So it really looks like a 3-horse race. You've got the Cardinals at 9-2, who have looked fantastic this year. They were the last team to lose, and they look great. But Kyler Murray's been hurt here lately, and that has caused them to take a bit of a step back and really struggle. Even in the games they're winning, they are barely winning, and they are struggling through games. But again, offensively, they're very good. They have a lot of weapons, and they look like they could really put up points consistently once Kyler Murray gets back. So I don't worry about them too much offensively. Defensively, they still have work to do, I think, but they're not bad there either. Probably the best team in that division. You can make an argument with the LA Rams. The LA Rams are at 7-4, 2 games behind. It's going to be tough to catch the Cardinals, but the Rams could do it. The Rams are a good football team. They picked up Von Miller before the trade deadline. They picked up Odell Beckham Jr., which is fortunate for them. Look, the Odell Beckham Jr. pickup is going to look like pure genius if we get the Odell Beckham of old. Because right after they signed him in practice, they lost Robert Woods to an ACL tear for the rest of the season. And so if Odell Beckham steps in and really, we get the old Odell snagging one-hand catches on the sidelines and scoring touchdowns left and right, that's going to look like a genius move. And one that, quite frankly, they needed to make. Obviously, they didn't know about Robert Woods' injury or didn't know it was going to happen. But in retrospect, perfect. It worked out perfect. They got a receiver to replace one that was eventually going to go down. Von Miller helps on defense. It's going to take a little bit of time for him to get acclimated to the new system, but Von Miller's a beast on defense. And so that team is making moves to win now, as they say. Matt Stafford is probably the big question mark, right? Over the last few weeks, he's thrown a couple pick sixes. Puts up good numbers, but if you look a little bit deeper, you see that the Rams are getting behind the 8 ball because of some miscues early from Stafford specifically, and then kind of turns it on at the end and really ends up with some good numbers. But is it really? When he puts them in the hole in the first place. So, the Rams have some work to do. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't know how much I trust them going forward. And basically my concern is Matt Stafford more so than the team itself. The San Francisco 49ers are at 6-5. Look, they've quietly, and I mean quietly, won 3 in a row. I put them in the category with the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of quietly with a winning record. They had a rough stretch early on in the season, losing 3 straight, but now they've won 3 straight. They beat the Rams, they beat the Jaguars, which always helps to get an easy win in there. They beat the Vikings at home in a tough game, and the Vikings, we've already said we don't think are the greatest team ever, and tough to figure out. And now they get the Seahawks, the Bengals, the Falcons, the Titans, and the Texans. So when you look at what's left for them, and then the Rams one more time, when you look at what's left for the San Francisco 49ers, they have a favorable schedule. There's some quote-unquote easy wins. It's the NFL. Anything can happen on any given Sunday. But there are some easy wins in there. The Falcons, the Seahawks, the Texans. Those are all fairly easy wins for them if they can just do what they're doing, which is run the ball. They run the ball, play good defense. They do that, they're going to be in business. Defensively, they're very good. Aside from the Vikings this past week, who scored 26, they've given up 22 or less. 22 or less in 7 games. 7 games prior to that. Look, if you give up 22 points or less in the NFL, in today's NFL, you have a very good chance of winning. So it's no wonder how they've done it. They've done it on defense over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Actually, I take it back. They did give up 30 to the Colts and 28 to the Seahawks. So I take that back. But again, defensively, very solid team. I think the Niners are going to make the playoffs, partially because of the schedule that they've got in front of them, and partially because, I trust defense more than I trust offense sometimes. And look, they're a solid team. So that's kind of my roundup of the NFL after week 12. I think we're on. We just finished week 12. The season's 1 week longer. It's weird. It doesn't, 1 week, it's 1 game. It doesn't seem like that much when you say it out loud. But when you're 12 games into the season and you got 5 to play instead of 4, it feels like there's a lot more room to get the engine revving and make a good solid run for the playoffs. But we shall see what happens over the next few weeks. Look, folks, this is a fantastic time of year when it comes to sports. Now, I just went over the NFL because, well, that's the big dog in town. But if you're a baseball fan, free agency has been incredibly interesting. If you're a college football fan, the last few weeks have been fantastic. Incredible games, rivalry games. When you get the rivalry games, it's a lot of fun. And the NBA season has started. It's already looking pretty interesting. For those of you that like hockey, the NHL season is well underway as well. It's a great time of year. Plenty of sports to talk about. Plenty of sports on the telly, as they say. Now, that doesn't mean you should watch sports all the time. It is my favorite pastime, but it's also the Christmas season. Spend time with your family and friends and spread that Christmas spirit to everyone. So again, to all of you that wanted to have your peppermint schnapps and your hot chocolate with peppermint marshmallows back in October or, right after Halloween, you can go for it. Go full bore into Christmas mode. We are 24 days away from Christmas. Have fun and enjoy. As always, folks, we appreciate your support. You can catch us on YouTube, Podbean, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you choose to consume your podcast, you can catch us there, the Positive Sports Podcast. If you want to reach out to the show and let me know what your thoughts are on the NFL season or any of those other sports for that matter, you can email the show, positivesports10@gmail.com, positivesports10@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to my brother who is hot and heavy into the football and basketball seasons, he's not much of a hockey fan, and he's big on baseball free agency. Obviously, he's a big baseball fan. The Mets have been making moves, so he's got opinions on it. You want to reach out to him and interact with him about any of that stuff, you can do so on Twitter at Brooklyn Gaucho1. And if you want to talk to me about football, baseball, heck, any sport, I'm a sports junkie. I'll watch anything. I've often said this. If there were 2 cockroaches racing around a track, I would watch. You can reach me on Twitter as well at eMontana21. Folks, enjoy the Christmas season. Enjoy the fact that we are in the month of December. Let's finish the year out strong. But most importantly, folks, ignore the negativity. Be the positivity. Peace.